Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. I know it's been a long day. My name is David. I lead all our cloud startup ecosystem work across all of Europe, including our startup program. And effectively, what does that mean? It means that I spend all my day and all my time working with founders, helping them as they're looking to build their MVP as quick as possible, but also on their journey to how do they scale that infrastructure. And through that process, I probably speak to somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 startups a quarter, and it helps to develop some muscle memory. And invariably, you start seeing trends, and certainly AI is not something new, but certainly it's been evolving because computing and the amount of data that we collect has made things much more possible. But I think a lot of guidance that I would provide startups that are thinking about building an AI-centric product is that the underlying principles still remain the same, which is that you still need to build something that people want, and it's still all about the users being first, and the users as far as what does that journey and what does that experience mean to them. So starting a company from a barrier of entry standpoint has never been easier than it is today. But certainly scaling and going from that first $1 million in revenue to 10 million to 100 million and then on has never been harder. There's certainly a lot more inputs, and there's a lot of noise that exists out there, especially when people are talking about AI and machine learning. I always love this slide because it really helps to kind of like capture about that hype and what it means. I'd venture to say that just about every pitch deck that I've reviewed in the last 12 months, 24 months, has had probably at least 5 of these words sitting within it. But it's all for good reason, because I think people do understand that ultimately we are living in one of the best times of our life as far as from a technical revolution standpoint. And there are some truths, though, as far as when we're thinking about building an AI company or just injecting AI into the customer journey to try and improve the user experience, is that it's still fundamentally about the data. When you think about where do we spend the majority of our time, it's ultimately still around the collecting of the data, and it's about the cleaning of the data and preparing the data to ultimately be able to eventually train models and do the machine learning and an AI component. And this tweet here really helps to encapsulate that. Because when a lot of startups are thinking about the hiring process and how do we go about building a team, assembling a team that can allow us to build some of these beautiful things, I think this is one of the things that really stands out. Is that obviously, when you're pitching to VCs, a lot of it's going to be about AI this, AI that, but the reality is you still fundamentally need data engineers. So I think that certainly should be one of the considerations when you're thinking about amassing a team, is having people that are certainly capable with that data component. And ultimately, also thinking about the actual question, which is, what problem am I trying to solve? Because oftentimes, most people are rushing right into kind of, deep learning ensemble models and really just kind of AI washing solutions instead of thinking about what problem am I trying to solve? But then beyond that, it's also about, with that data, that are we ultimately putting ourselves in a position to collect not only as much data as possible, but more importantly, the quality of that data, because things still remain the same, rubbish in, rubbish out. And that's going to be one of the key components for as teams are thinking about building a team and building a product that they need to have at the forefront from a consideration standpoint. So now that we've talked a little bit about some of the kind of underlying principles that hold true, which is that it's about the data, I thought it'd be good to show a little bit about reference architecture. So just to kind of bring things to life a bit more. So this is just one of many, but when you think about how do you get started, obviously you need a method to do the ingestion of the data. So and also not just the ingestion, but then the messaging and the queuing. So that can come in a form of a variety of ways, from PubSub to RabbitMQ to SQS. But then from there, obviously you need some storage buckets. And then once you have that component, then you need to start thinking about, all right, how are we going to process this data? And what are my needs and requirements? Are they coming in the form of, do I need to process the data in batches? Or are they going to happen in streams? And also, does it need to be in real time? And now that real-time component's an interesting one, because most people have their own definition of real time. And what does that mean? So it's always going to be one of the things for people to think about when they're thinking about what is that experience for the user, and what does that mean from how we build. And I use data flow there just because it's based off of the open source Apache Beam project, and open source is awesome. So then from there, it's going to be about how do we enrich that data? How do we extract insights quicker? So you can use a variety of data warehousing solutions, from BigQuery to Redshift to Snowflake. And then if you find yourself in a position where you have a workload of persistent layer with a lot of high read writes, then you might use a NoSQL database like Bigtable. Couchbase could be an alternative as well. And then from there, now we get to this wonderful place where we can start talking about predictions, because that's kind of almost the holy grail. We want to be able to ultimately predict what the user's expecting, and try and use that almost as a proxy to be able to enlighten or have them enjoy that experience. So once you have that, then how do you have some visualization tools for your teams? And that can come with a variety of different types of connectors, from Click to Tableau, and the resulting force of what you get is buzzword, buzzword, buzzword. But more importantly, and all joking aside, what you do get and what you're trying to achieve is ultimately trying to have a stack where you are ultimately reducing the amount of time and overhead for DevOps engineers, so that way they can focus more on writing code and shipping product. Fundamentally, that's what it's about, because just managing global infrastructure, that's not going to win things with your users. What is going to is paying close attention to features and ultimately the things that they want to be able to enrich that experience. So I thought it'd be good to talk a little bit about use cases, because it's not real unless we show people that are actually using all these tools and achieving things. So Nyrus is ultimately a startup that ultimately they're using OCR, so image recognition. So the video's not playing, but you'll have to trust me when I tell you that ultimately they take a picture, and then they'll use a TensorFlow model in the back. And ultimately what it does is then it's able to catalog what that picture is. And in the video, one of the things that you can see as far as the power of their technology is that it's taken a picture of a wine glass, and it can tell you exactly what type of wine glass, who's the retailer, and you can put it into your shopping cart, which is really nice, because knowing what one wine glass is from another could be quite difficult for the human eye, let alone for machines. So really cool work that they are doing. Another one is TerraLoop. So TerraLoop has a couple different use cases and projects that they've been building. One has been building the kind of infrastructure for autonomous driving, road infrastructure that is. And another one has been around using aerial satellite imagery for reducing manual work for insurance claims. So this one is a great illustration of that, in the sense that you can see that a couple years ago there were a lot of consecutive hurricanes that had ravaged the Caribbean. And for me, this was extremely close one, in the sense that I am from Puerto Rico originally, and so I had a lot of family there that experienced this. And ultimately, what they were able to do is they knew that trying to get manual assessments and be able to do that at scale and to do it quickly is nearly impossible. But what they were able to do was they were able to use the aerial satellite imagery, process those images with machine learning to ultimately reduce the amount of time to be able to provide insights, and the result is they were able to reduce a lot of the adjuster's workload. So really cool how they were able to do that. Now, the part that we see is just, the taking the pictures, but all the hard work that the engineers are doing is with the data. And that's what really makes it magic. And that's what ultimately helps provide a great experience for their customers. And the last user experience, or rather, use case that I wanted to talk about was from Dedalian. So they are absolutely an AI-first company, and they are ultimately making the bet that they are going to be able to train with enough data to have an autopilot that will be able to surpass anything that humans can do. And how they do that is, they really kind of peeled back the layers of the onion, if you will, in the sense that they went through and read all the textbooks around what's required to become a pilot today. And then from there, they went through to try and understand from an actual training and live hours, how do you do that? So they are ultimately trying to provide the software stack for vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. And now how they're doing that is obviously doing a lot of test flights, and then with those test flights, they're collecting the data. They have to do a lot of 3D mapping and imagery around that. And for them to do that, it's being able to distinguish between what's a building, what's a mountain, what's power lines, being able to identify where are safe places to land. And they've really amassed a wonderful engineering team to be able to really make that happen. This was meant to be a video that showed all the things that I just told you about. So again, you'll have to trust me that it's there, and I don't mind sharing the deck afterwards. But really inspiring stuff that all three are doing. And I say inspiring because every day, I get to talk to founders and people that are literally trying to shape society, transform industries, and they're really the ones doing the hard work. And I always say that they'll be called, founders and startups will be called many things across their lifetime, and I promise you it won't always be flattering. But that focus, that determination, that discipline is ultimately going to be what matters as we think about how do our economies globally scale, and how do we continue to diversify the work that we do and make sure that it's important for our society. So I appreciate the time, and thank you very much.